Hello, this is John Smith, and thank you for joining me for the Psalming Effect. Today is May the 3rd, 2021, and I'm sharing today from Psalm chapter 55, and I hope this will be of some encouragement to you today and throughout this coming week. In Psalm 55, if you take the time to read the whole psalm, you'll think there's not a whole lot that's encouraging in this psalm. It's in fact, in the one Bible I have, it's called a song of betrayal, the betrayal of a friend. Well, that doesn't sound very positive. But here's what the psalm is about. Let me read some of the verses from it. First, I'm going to read verses 9 through 11. This is from Psalms chapter 55, verses 9 through 11. Confuse, O Lord, confound their speech, for I see violence and strife in the city. Day and night they go around it on its walls, and iniquity and trouble are within it. Ruin is in its midst. Oppression and fraud do not depart from its marketplace. Wow, that's a bit of a dark description of David's city that he lives in. You know, David grew up out in the hills, looking after sheep when he was young for his family. And then when he was a young man, he was anointed to be the future king, and he became a military leader and actual hero. But he was always on campaign, spent a lot of time on campaign out in the wilderness. He ended up in the mountains and the ravines and the region called the Shephelah in the Holy Land, and he was a rugged outdoorsman. But when he finally became king, he had conquered the city of Jerusalem, and he made it his capital city. He became a city dweller, a city man. He lived in a palace, and I think this psalm is written during those times. And you know, David never experienced peace, even when he lived in a city with fortified walls and a palace. In fact, sometimes he had to flee from his own capital city in the nation where he was king because of what was going on around him. But as I read these verses, they struck a chord with me because I think about what's going on in some of our cities. You know, we live in times of turbulence and at times betrayal. There's terrible things going on. And so as this passage from Psalm 55 describes David's sense of polarization and animosity in the city where he resides, it also speaks to me about the atmosphere that many of us feel in the cities where we live during this time of strife and of difficulty and of challenge, when we want things to be the way they used to be, not the way they are now. And we're growing impatient, expecting things to get better, but they aren't there yet. And it's frustrating. It's very frustrating. Let me read verses 12 through 14, though, and listen closely to why David is especially feeling brokenhearted about the situation. It is not enemies who taunt me. I could bear that. It is not adversaries who deal insolently with me. I could hide from them. But it is you, my equal, my companion, my familiar friend, with whom I kept pleasant company. We walked in the house of God with the throng. Do you see why David is so bothered by the situation? I mean, all his life he has dealt with enemies, but now Now he's dealing with a friend, even a brother, who has turned against him. This also got me to thinking about the situation we find ourselves in. You know, we've been fighting this pandemic and the circumstances surrounding it for over a year now. And you know, if you listen to some of the things, some of the messages that I posted about a year ago, I was very hopeful that, I mean, none of us had any idea just exactly what the course of things would be and how long this battle was going to continue around us. But my hope was, and my call was, that this would bring us together as we battled a common enemy, especially those of us who share common faith and belief in God. I felt like, well, this will be something that'll bind us closer together as we try and support each other through this tough time, and as we join together in ministry and care for other people. That was my hope. Sadly, that's not what I've observed. What I've observed is that people have become polarized over issues, not just over the severity or even the reality of the pandemic we're in, and there's such polarizing and opposite views. But people have polarized over political things, over social values, over climate conditions, you know, environment. There's just a whole lot of things that people have polarized, and even among brothers and sisters in the faith, I have observed a whole lot, and at least too much, animosity, wrangling, and mudslinging. What this year should have done for us, and I believe could still do if we would give our heads a shake, it should cause us to roll up our sleeves, and regardless of the views that people might have that are opposite to ours about whatever issues you want to mention, and it doesn't matter what they are. When people are in crisis, what are the people of God supposed to do? I believe the people of God are to roll up their sleeves and get in there and serve. They're to serve one another, their brothers and sisters. They're to serve their enemies. They're to serve strangers who they don't even know. You know, when I think about what's going on in the world, regardless of and never mind what I think about, you know, the pandemic. The reality is that the whole nation of India is in a crisis right now because of what's going on. There are underprivileged neighborhoods in some of our large cities in Canada which are in real crisis right now because of what's going on. There are isolated communities in the north, in some of our provinces and territories, that they're going through a real crisis. There are, and never mind communities, there are individuals who, I mean, before this year, already were struggling with drug addictions, with mental illnesses, and now that they've experienced and have been thrown into a year of isolation, they're literally dying. I mean, some of them are taking their own lives, and their problems, which were already problems, are literally killing them. And does it matter if they're believers or not? Does it matter if they're family members or not? Does it matter if they're in our neighborhood or they're in a neighborhood on the other side of the tracks? What is it that the people of God are called to do? I believe we're called to serve, to show the love of God and to show care, and to reach out and try and help people in their time of crisis, whether they're down the street, across the river, or across the ocean. And for sure, the people of God, brothers and sisters, who, as David says here in verse 14, we walked in the house of God with the throng. For sure, we're not to turn against each other. But this is a time when we rally together. Well, sorry if today's psalming effect seemed more like a rant than a word of encouragement, but I hope it comes to you as a word of encouragement, and that it will give you some things to think about this week that will maybe make today and tomorrow and the days ahead actually better. That you will have less thoughts of, why did he do this, or why does she say that, but instead, when you look at him or her, instead you will be touched by how they're doing and what struggle they might be having, and you will be moved to serve, regardless of what side of what issue they're on compared to you. That I hope is the encouragement that you received today and that you take with you. So God bless you. Spend more time in Psalm 55 and throughout the scriptures, and do some careful thinking about what our mission is as believers and followers of God. And remember that in 2021, He's still the one.